Welcome to Round Hill Radio. Through our conversations, we discover the holy and the ordinary, look for moments of grace and peace, and redefine what we talk about faith.
Well, we are thrilled to be welcoming back Adam Smedberg. I feel like you're a friend of the family now, Adam. You've been in the Round Hill Community Church circle for a little while, so we're really glad to be having a conversation with you. Learn about the work of Church World Service, which is one of our favorite organizations. We're so, we love the work that you do, and we're glad to be part of supporting it in whatever way that we can. So, and we're looking forward to March 30th, which is a time when you're going to be with us at Round Hill Community Church. We're especially glad that you've been able to come and visit us in person these last few years. So that's been really a nice gift. So, Adam, for our listeners, if you can just remind us of your specific work and job title at Church World Service, and just a quick little description of the work that Church World Service makes possible nationally and internationally.
Well, it's great to be back again, Pastor Ed. You mentioned being part of the extended family. I remember coming and visiting with you guys before COVID. And I don't know if this is our second or third time since COVID, getting a chance to come and visit. And I'm reminded of my colleague up here, Erin, when I first started in 2017, she would jokingly say, because my previous two predecessors were with CWS for less than a year each, she was like, "Oh no, are you? How long are you planning to be here?" And no, now I can safely say it's, going into, July will be 8 years.
Wow,
with Church World
congratulations.
Service. Thank you. I'm a community engagement specialist, which means I work with communities, faith communities, crop hunger walk communities to raise the funds to help the programs that we do here at Church World Service.
Wow.
And our work, we've been here now 79 years. And our CEO was telling us the other day, he's really looking forward to our 80th anniversary next year, and all the great work that we have done over the course of these 79 years.
Yeah. And it's national and international, right?
Yes. Yeah. So our work can be broken down into, I like to refer to 3 pillars of mission focus. Hunger and poverty, natural disaster support for communities impacted, and refugee and migrant relocation. Both. And really all 3 of those are both national and international programs. So we do work. As a matter of fact, when I come down and visit you guys at the end of the month, I'll be visiting a group in Bridgeport, Connecticut on the way home, because they're putting together their crop walk. And the crop hunger walks not only support our work we do internationally, but 25% of the money they raise stays right there in their local area. So they actually have, I believe it's 10 different food pantries that they support locally in the Bridgeport area. So, all of the programs we have, we are very intentional about making sure not only do they support families, internationally, but families right here in our communities who need our support.
Yeah. I have a wonderful memory of Crop Walk when my daughter was about 3 years old. I had her in the, in the pram, and we would be walking for Crop Walk every year. My son, when he was born a few years later, same thing, and we really benefited a lot from being part of those Crop Walks. Those were in Concord, New Hampshire. That's where we participated, and so it's wonderful that you've been able to sustain that activity over the years.
Yeah, the crop walks, we when we talk about crop walks, we always say we were the granddaddy of walkathons, because we were the first ones. The first crop walks were, I believe, now 55 years ago.
Okay, wow.
And Bridgeport actually is 51st year this year. And I always joke when I talk about the age of Church World Service, and I always, I say, hey, we started in 1946. No, I was not there when we first started. I came on about 2 weeks later. So, but, we started by working with farmers in the Midwest, providing seed and grain to farmers in Europe whose land was devastated during World War II.
Sure.
And now, all the different communities that we work in. This past October, we actually opened up an office in Ukraine, in this southwest region in Odessa.
Okay.
We've been working in Moldova, which is a small country on the western border of Ukraine. It is a small country, only 2.5 million people.
Huh.
It is not part of NATO or the EU, and it's one of the poorest countries in the world. They've taken in over 800,000 Ukrainian refugees since the war started in 2022.
Wow, great news.
Yes. And so we have opened this office to provide support to marginalized communities, and working with local partners there to get relief support to the families impacted by the war. And we are one of the first organizations to be able to set up an office and start getting support to those impacted by this war.
Wow. Well, it must feel great for you to be part of an organization that has that historical basis. The United States especially, right, in the years after the Second World War, after all of that devastation, was one of the shining lights that helped to actually instigate a lot of programs and projects. So Church World Service, to help people rebuild their lives, that was across Europe. Friends as well as foes, right, all benefited from that experience. And thinking about Church World Service, Heifer Project International, so many great organizations, right, that came out of that time.
And what we've been able to do to help families, we have programs in over 40 different countries. So it's all across the globe. As a matter of fact, when I do my presentations with my crop hunger walks, I always refer to as Around the World with Church World Service. Playing off to the old Around the World in 80 days. And we do one of the first programs I got introduced to was a program in Vietnam. This was up in the rural mountain regions where individuals, families did not have access to latrines. And so they would just, go out in the fields and take care of their business there. And what we were seeing was, because of the open defecation, waterborne diseases were killing almost 1 million people every year. So we were able to work with these communities and set up public latrines in schools and other public buildings, and teach the children how to wash their hands. And I remember one of the first times I got a chance to talk about this program with a group, and I had someone come up to me, and they, very similar to what you're just saying, said, well, what about folks, you're in northern Vietnam, and with everything that has happened, and I kind of explained to them that we're working with the children, and this is in 2017, so they wouldn't have been born or around during much of that conflict. And we're doing this to help and to bring people together in community and provide them with support that they've never had before. And when the war in Vietnam ended back in the 70s, we were one of the first organizations invited in to provide support and provide help. So our reputation as an organization, people know us, people trust us, and they know when Church World Service comes into a community, we're not going to leave until the job is done. You guys, we're doing the kit event here at the end of the month, and the kits are part of our natural disaster response. As a matter of fact, just looking at my notes here real quick, when Hurricane Milton and Helene hit last year,
Yes.
we distributed over 10,000 of the hygiene kits.
Wow.
We distributed over 1,800 period packs to the communities that were impacted. And so these kits, like the ones we're going to be making, those are part of our initial response when it comes to a natural disaster. But we remain in those communities far long after many, we were there 5 or 6 years helping communities rebuild and finding them folks get the resources that they need to make sure that they are able to rebuild their lives and that they are able to go on and have a better life and, hopefully have a home now that is more disaster resistant than it was beforehand.
Yeah. Adam, somebody asked me a question a couple of weeks ago, and I wasn't sure I could give it an exact answer to this, so I want to make sure to answer. Can you track a disaster recovery kit for us? It gets made in Round Hill Community Church in our parlor, and where does it go from there?
So from there, they will go to, immediately afterwards, it will go to our depot in Meriden, and there to our warehouse in outside of Baltimore.
Okay, all right.
And there they'll go through, make sure everything is in there, and once everything's inventoried and is correct, go through all the logistics. Then wherever the first request comes, they will go. So if it's a disaster, it'll go there. If it is to a homeless shelter or a domestic violence shelter, it'll go there. If it is to a shelter along the border that is helping in this migrant family, it'll go there. So we don't hold things, for this or for that. Basically, first come, first serve, they're gone. Now, there are going to be some seasons where we may say, hey, let's make sure, because we're seeing a Category 4 coming off the coast, let's make sure we have stuff ready to go. And that's the thing, like when it comes to a hurricane, we'll typically have materials positioned in an area where we know that the hurricane is not going to hit, but close enough that once everything has happened, we can go in and deploy the kits and the blankets and supplies necessary. Like the wildfires in California, we weren't able to deploy those until much later because we didn't want to send stuff to an area and then all of a sudden the winds pick up.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. And, all of a sudden they have to evacuate. Yeah. And I think that was a lesson a lot of organizations took back in 2017. Hurricane Harvey. So in 2017, we had 3 Category 4 hurricanes hit the U.S. Harvey, Irma, Maria. And Harvey, and I believe it was Irma, both hit the Houston area within like a week of each other. So basically what happened was, after Harvey came through, organizations were sending supplies in, but they had to batten down the hatches right away because another hurricane came through. And unfortunately, some things didn't make it through that second hurricane. And so, they try to make sure that materials are going to be positioned, but in a way that they're not going to be in the path of another storm or something else that happens.
Yep, understood.
The same thing goes with, tornadoes. I mean, we can't deploy anything until after the tornadoes go through. And again, because those kind of jump out, don't want to say jump out of nowhere, but you don't have really the warning system like you have for a hurricane when it comes to those.
Sure. Yep. Adam, here in Greenwich, we've been hearing stories about the impact of recent federal cuts on local organizations, everything from Meals on Wheels to Jewish Family Services, which is a local resettlement agency. And we've actually worked very closely with them to help resettle Afghan evacuees in the last several years. So we're paying very close attention to what our neighbor organizations are experiencing. We imagine this has no doubt affected Church World Service as well. And I guess my question is, if that is so, are you now reaching out with additional appeals to faith communities around the country to try to lessen that gap as you go forward?
Yes, we are. But we're also mindful of what these executive orders and the changes the administration is making are having on all communities. You mentioned Jewish Family Services, and they actually work out of my church up here in Springfield, Massachusetts. They do a very similar program with groups, and so I've had a chance to see some of the work that they do up here as well.
Sure.
But we've also been reaching out to our denominational partners,
Great.
like the UCC, the Methodists, the Reformed Church, and letting them know, hey, this is how we're being impacted. These are this is the way things have been working, both on a national level as well as an international level.
Great.
Because we actually partner with USAID on projects. And so I'm sure you've seen them, what's been going on with them in the news. And actually, if you give me 1 second here, I'm just going to pull up. So yeah, we had 2 international programs that were impacted when USAID was pulled out. One in Thailand. USAID was operating a hospital and staffed it, and they've had to close the hospital, and the staff have been recalled. So now we are not only working with Burmese refugees on food and shelter, but now medical needs as well. And then also the Dominican Republic of the Congo. USAID peacekeepers were working with the M23 rebels and kind of keeping them at bay. Now that they have left, the rebels have taken up more territory and are pushing more people out of their homes. And now we're seeing more refugees coming into Uganda and Tanzania as a result. So the cutbacks have definitely impacted us. But as I said before, we're as a trusted organization, when we reach out to the UCC, the Methodist Church, the Episcopal Church, and say, this is what's going on, this is what we're seeing. We're coming to you with one of 2 requests. One, absolutely, if a church is able to do an emergency offering for us or do a gift for us, that would be great. But the second thing, and this is just as important, is please add us to their prayer list. And not just us as an organization, but the families and communities we serve, because they're caught up in this as well. And these are folks who, we're here to help and we're here to lift them up.
Right.
And that's what is most important, and we don't want them to get lost in this.
I just want to say, Adam, one of the things that's always impressed me about you and also Church World Service is that focus on relationship and the way that faith communities can support that. And so many of the most impactful organizations on my life, the ones that, I've been able to hopefully help in some small way, have always said to me, yeah, we always appreciate the financial donations, but pray for us, get to know us better, get to know the people we serve, in terms of read about it, find out more about it. And to me, in a world where we're wanting to find as many ways possible to come together around common cause, I just really appreciate that comment from you and the spirituality, I guess I would call it, of Church World Service.
We know what we can do when we come together, and Church World Service was founded on the basis of we can do more together than we can apart. And when we as faith communities come together, when we as individuals come together to serve a cause that we know is greater than ourselves and can have such a lasting impact on so many people, it means the world. And that's, I was talking with a pastor friend not too long ago. He's up in the Boston area, and we were catching up. He recently lost his husband, and we hadn't had a chance to talk since he had passed, but we were talking about some things that we were reflecting on what we were seeing, and what we were seeing, and what some people have, the different titles that people have clung to, and I just remember saying something about, it just doesn't feel like the Christian direction that we want to be going into. And he said, we can do better. We can be better. And I think that's just the big message is, what we are seeing and trust me, it is very easy to get down some rabbit holes, because I know I certainly have gone down a couple of them. The internet is great for things like that. But at the end of the day, we had the opportunity to do some great things to help lift each other up. And,
Yes.
and if, as long as we focus on that, I think, we can do some great good for a lot of people.
Yeah. I completely agree, Adam. And in fact, I just kind of a closing thought in your last sentence, you used the words both great and good. And I think in our country, we often talk, about going from good to great, but I think now we're having a chance to go from great to good, and find the deepest meanings of goodness. And one of the ways we do that is to collaborate with great organizations like Church World Service and do the very best that we can. So we are thrilled that you're coming back on March 30th. We look forward to that. We thank you for the work that you are doing, you and your colleagues, through a lot of changes and a lot of pivoting we know that you have to do. And we will keep you in our prayers, and we wish you grace and peace as you go forward.
Thank you. You mentioned pivoting, and it reminds me a lot of what we're going through now with what we had to go through during COVID and how we had to change and adapt then, much like the churches had to. I mean, I go to my church now, does the live streaming every service. They weren't doing that beforehand. So
a lot of us can identify with that.
So, so I look at it and, yes, we have to pivot, and, yes, we may look different in a year, but we are absolutely committed to our mission of lifting up our neighbors and making sure our neighbors have the support that they need.
Yeah.
And it's great partners like Round Hill who make that possible, to lift up those who need us. And we're really grateful to work with you on these projects.
Well, likewise, Adam, we look forward to seeing you on March 30th. We wish you grace in the meantime, and thank you for being our guest, and all the very best to you and everyone at Church World Service.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed this podcast, there are a few things that you can do that would make a big difference to us. Like the video, subscribe if you aren't, and click the notification bell and select all. Thank you.